Hey, welcome to Roaming Minds. I'm Carlos.
I'm AJ, and here we talk about the thoughts that kept us out of all the really good schools. You know, those quiet spirals, the questions that keep you up at night, and the trials and tribulations that we all face as human beings.
This show is part reflection, part reminder. We're not broken, we're on a journey of growth. Please note that this conversation should not be taken as medical or professional advice. See the link in the description below if you require immediate help.
Every week, we unpack what it means to choose joy. Not the loud version that Karen is peddling, but the quiet, hard-earned kind that comes from finally feeling like yourself again.
Let's keep this conversation going. Join us on Discord or connect to a peer through Kindred. Let's get into it.
Welcome to the final episode of Season 2. The reason why I'm exceptionally excited about today is because we get to introduce this concept that has, we could argue, has been developing since the beginning, but
No,
that really
yeah,
kind of took shape this season.
no, yeah. I was gonna say when you first told me what the topic was, I was like, you know what? We've touched base with on it throughout we've it's either like a throwaway line or part of a larger conclusion of whatever that a specific topic we're talking about that day. But I think that we've laid a decent groundwork for it to come to a good fruition for what we're going to be discussing today.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. I'm super excited about it. I think it's very surreal. So, with that, the way that I want to kind of start is I want you to think about a peaceful scene, whatever that is for you. Again, I like the idea of the quiet beach being one of the few people on. Deserted beaches are always kind of weird to me because I grew up on public beaches. So the light is super nice. There's a soft wind blowing when you put your
Yeah.
feet in the water. It's
No,
not cold, but it's not like bath water. It's perfectly
no,
temperature.
literally. I last night, me and my roommate, we we literally went to the beach at like 1 a.m. There was nobody there. The moon was it was a near perfect full moon. The light was reflecting. The water was crystal clear. It was beautiful. And there were maybe like, as far as we can see, maybe like four other people on the beach at that time.
hmm Where did you feel that? Where did you
Like I
feel
felt like a sense of
all of
tranquility
those things?
all over my body. It was a sense of
All
tranquility
over.
all over. My head felt lighter. I feel like a weight because throughout the day, because of like my schedule, the work and all that, especially the past week with 3 exams, there was a lot of stress on my back. But then as I was walking on the beach near the water, the waves were coming in, felt like everything just felt lighter, free.
hmm Right. Okay. And so then we're going to contrast that with think about an area of high volatility, extreme unpredictability. So sirens, there could be smoke, there could be any kind of fractured space, a scene that maybe is partially cleaned up and then the rest of it's just like a tornado hit, right? Think about something like that, something that is very tumultuous. And then answer the same question. Where do you feel that in your body?
I feel stressed, overstimulated. It's everywhere. It's like, well, the main, usually everywhere, but it's like my stomach, my back, my upper
hmm
back, my neck, my head. And I'm just like, oh, God, this is like a lot.
Yep. Which I didn't. We'll have to talk about that later. I feel that's pretty common to feel that in your stomach and back area.
Oh, yeah.
This is where a lot of your primary communication is happening. Not that it's not happening to your extremities,
I mean,
but
no, physiologically, it makes sense because you have the
right.
vagus nerve, and the
hmm
vagus nerve goes from the brain down to your stomach, and over it's a lot of area because the vagus nerve is being studied for gut brain axis to see how your gut is affecting your brain. So it's all connected.
Right. And so I guess what I'm gonna kind of ask is when you walk into one of those highly volatile spaces, is it something that that happens instantaneously, or is it something that you carried with you before? And I'm going to ask just what your opinion is and what you think.
And no.
Okay.
So if it's a new environment, then the answer is no. I'm not because I didn't know what I was expecting. So I'm just walking into it and then be like, okay, whoa, this seems a lot. There might be a little bit low level of stress because it might be a new environment. So I might be carrying some preconceived stress and pressure in my body already going into that space. But definitely, if I know it's to be like a crazy, volatile, whatever word you want to use, I'm already dreading and I'm already like, okay, okay. So my body is already has gone into that mode, which sometimes is helpful because sometimes you're like, okay, you know what? It's not as bad as I thought it was going because you kind of the body, the mind, and the body and the experience they kind of meet expectations. So you're like, okay, it is what it is. And sometimes you're just like, God, I knew it, and it just makes everything worse.
Hmm. And so I think what I really want to kind of highlight is really what we are talking about is this concept of spatial influence, because you said yes and no. Sure, I may be carrying stress from a prior space, but I may not be. And I
Yeah.
may just walk in and it just kind of hits all at once and there it goes and it's all over. Or it's kind of a mix of both. But what we want to kind of hammer home and what we kind of want to pay attention to is this influence that the spaces have on our body as a whole,
Mhm.
but also how that relates mentally. And this is exactly what we have been talking about all season. And so really all we did was we take it and kind of take the stuff that we've been talking about and we fit it under this, I don't want to say umbrella because it's not really an umbrella that we're sticking. It's just one cohesive concept now that we are going to kind of introduce and talk to. And so the idea is that everything around you at every single moment in time is a complex, dynamic system that influences the emergence of your mind. And then your mind is constantly changing in response to those dynamic emergence of your mind. That
Mhm.
dynamic interplay that is constantly happening between you and environment. A lot of current therapies, we think about psychotherapy, we think about CBT, they handle here and they handle internal. And what they don't necessarily account for is out here. Now, that's not to say that they're not aware that triggers
With
occur and
yeah,
sensory coupling happens. I understand that,
I was gonna
but
say, could it be because at least internally you have some kind of control over internally, and maybe that's why the focus is internally, and externally you don't have as much control because that depends on the actions of others, the climate, the what that there are so many other factors that goes that you cannot even conceive of, like the many possibilities of that. Maybe at least in my opinion, I think that maybe doing the internal work can give you the tools to maybe necessarily deal with the outside.
I will say partially. And this goes back to Freud and the unconscious, all the way back. Everything that we exist inside of has influence over our mental and our physical being. This goes back to epigenetics. Our genes behave in certain ways dependent on the environment with which they are in. Robert Sapolsky talks a lot about this in his lectures on YouTube, which was where I first got introduced to that concept. Um, and it's one of the driving factors to why he wrote his last book that I haven't read it, but I heard he kind of claims that we have no free will because of it. And I don't want to go down that road, but again, even on a cellular level, how our cells operate is environment dependent. And so then if that's the case, there is no reason why our mental processes, which are an emergent property, they arise because of the interactions that we have, because of the experiences that we have. If that's the case, then it stands to reason that our mind and our mental state is emergent based off of the environments with which we are in. And it is done subconsciously. This is not, I'm not aware of my body on a cellular level. Are you? I'm like, oh, dude, that cell in my left elbow, that motherfucker really knows what's up.
No, I'll say somewhat because I know most of the cellular processes that goes on, but no, I'm
Right.
not. If you're what's happening at this exact moment in your, I don't know, right elbow cell, I don't fucking know. I don't know. And
Of course not.
nobody does unless like, and plus even and the thing is, even if they're to script that cell and try to call, but that cell, it will just be that specific moment that it was taken off. Nothing before, nothing after. It will just be that specific moment that it was cultured and then put on that. That's the only thing it's capturing.
Right. And not to wish this on anybody or to say anything outrageous, but if you had some sort of cancerous growth inside of your cell in your left pinky, or I guess this would be my right pinky, my bad, so sorry. Apparently I don't know my right from my left today. Woo! If you have that, but it's not a full-grown tumor, it's beginning that process, I'm not aware of it. But if you think that's not influencing the processes that are going on inside of my body,
Yeah.
you crazy. And so if cells get influenced like that, then again, to me, it stands to reason that the emerging mind that occurs between each and every one of us, it makes sense that the world around us is an emergent property. We were talking beforehand about how I set up my I changed the layout of my room, and just to me, it goes those feng shui concepts, and I think that they figured that out a long time ago. Rooms carry with it a specific energy, and
Yeah.
based on how things are set up, and I don't think that we think about this in America. We think about cheap and effective and things like that because things are get. I can really I spend a lot of time in schools, so there's no school that's set up to optimize a learning environment. It's
Hmm.
designed to be as cheap as possible while still maintaining some level of appeal. But you walk inside of a school and those cold, hard cinder block walls that have been painted white, there's nothing pleasant about walking in there. They're built like prisons. They have more windows, but the insides are set up relatively not because
Yeah.
it's about minimizing costs then at that point. It's not
Because
about
no, I was
go
gonna
for
say
it.
it's yeah, because my friend and I we were on our way to lunch the other day. We were joking, and he was like, "Oh, like, would you rather go to prison?" I was like, "You know what?" I was like, "Isn't this what?" I was like, "Isn't this the equivalent of like low minimum security? Like, it because a low minimum security, you are allowed to leave, but then you come back. But like, typically, you have a." And I'm like looking at my life, I was like, will do technically well in a low medium security because I'm allowed to leave. I get to come back, and then I just repeat, 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 repeat. I was like, huh, what a fascinating thought. What's a fascinating thought process.
And then what I'm going to ask you is, does that do anything for your mental process? Anything beneficial?
I was like, damn, but that sucks. But then I was like, you know what? At least I can survive. At least if I were to go to a low minimum security prison, I will be fine.
Right. But ideally, we're not in that kind of a situation.
Yeah,
I came up with at least one analogy that we can kind of use. Think about it. Now in DC, we have all four seasons. We've got summer, winter, fall, spring. My car behaves differently in every single climate with the change of the season.
yeah,
Most notably when it's coming into winter
winter.
and when it's coming out of winter, because winter is really the one that affects it the most. However, the car is like the human body. It's slightly different in that it's a closed loop system. It's got a start, an end, and there's not really a whole lot of influence going on unless you are fixing it. I mean, it's got the influence, like I said, that we're talking about weather, but we're talking about a system that gets influenced on the outside. The biggest difference is that the human body is adaptive. We adapt to our environment. The car does not really adapt to the environment. That's the biggest difference, except rather than just having weather come and affect us, we have every single thing affect us. Um, if you look at, have you ever seen Japanese shrine entrances with the,
Yes.
have you ever noticed that there are multiple different forms? If we build one of those in America, we're going to use a 4x4 or a 6x6, something square that
Yeah.
goes in the ground, and then we're going to attach it off the top, and it's going to be very angular. It's going to be very structural, and that's okay. But at least in terms of Japanese shrines, the bases and that go in are cylindrical, and then the top part is very angular. It's much more pleasant and appealing, is it not?
Yes.
Right? So you think to yourself, oh, well, that's stupid. What does that matter? Why is it really, does that really have that much of an influence on my mental well-being? And okay, well, let me ask you, if you go and you see, I'm going to use your medium prison example or low level security, and maybe it's not a prison, maybe it's high school or an elementary school. And every day I you go there every day and you see these things that are just ugly and not pleasing and that make you feel heavy. If I look at a heavy object, I tend to have a sense of heaviness that washes over me. All of these things influence our mental well-being. And if I'm constantly seeing that over and over and over and over again, my mental well-being is going to deteriorate more and more and more and more. It's just like compound interest. It starts off
Yeah.
small. I make one tiny change, and let's say, I don't know, I declutter one space. I'm like, man, that is so cool. And then I start seeing that every day. And it at least makes me 0.2% better every single day. Right? And then 0.2 and 0.4 and 0.6 and 0.8 and a whole full. And you're like, oh my goodness,
Yeah.
this is incredible. If you keep doing that over time, obviously you're going to be in better spirits. You're going to have better interactions with people. The amount of positivity that you have just let into your life by making such a minor shift is huge. This is why, when it comes to rehabs and things like that, the first thing they do is get you out of your environment because of triggers, but also because it goes much deeper than just you being triggered by a specific object. It
Yeah.
goes down to a more metacognitive aspect that that is almost impossible to be aware of because
Yeah.
we're not wired like that. We're
No.
not wired to intake all of that information. But the cool thing that we have is we have our internal locus of control. So we decide where we place our focus. We decide where we place our attention. And so if I'm constantly focused on improving that space just a little bit, again, it just comes back to compounding. It just keeps boom, 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 boom.
Right.
And then I can work my way from there. But the same can happen on the flip side as well. If I am incrementally adding more clutter to a space every single day, it's gonna weigh on me more and more and more each and every
Free.
single day. And this is only one example. It
Yeah.
goes so much deeper. So ultimately, and I think about it this way because of what is currently going on right now. We've talked a fair bit about what's happening in the world.
Right.
So we have the digital climate. We've got your how many notifications you're getting, how the algorithms are interacting with us, how volatile is the media that we're interacting with. well, we've seen, and people are now showing through studies that this is producing anxiety, this is producing attentional issues, emotional dysregulation, restless minds. All of these things are arising because of the way that we interact in those digital spaces.
Yeah.
That's one space. Then you have socially. Well, that's a problem because a lot of us just had an entire year where they missed out on things like micro expressions. They weren't as engaged with tone of voice because there was a separator between them. There was nobody else in the room. It was just them, technically. Everybody else was just in a digital space. And how those roles then, when you look at like I'm just going to use school setting because it's easy. When you think about a school setting in person, everybody has their roles to play. You have the class kiss ass, you've got the class genius, you've got the class clown. All of these things are out there.
Yeah.
It's normal. This is a part of
That is a weird unspoken social hierarchy that naturally forms in certain, because like, that's what people have such universal experience. So they're like, people ask like, are we living the same lives? And it's because there are just, when you get people in certain environments, certain things just naturally start to create and form. And so then
right.
that leads to this weird cognitive decline that I'm the only one living set reality. But then when you talk to other people, you're like, wait, the same thing happened to
Every
you?
yes. Right. And so those are thrown off recently. And people don't know how to behave socially. They don't know where they belong. So there's threats from there. They're not sure how to relate with people because how do you relate on a digital space other than by going, yeah, oh yeah, okay, sure. But you don't have that feeling.
Yeah.
And that feeling is very, very important to our social aspects. And even I think I talk about the younger generation, but I really do think that this spans into everybody just because we had a whole year where we barely interacted with people. Our entire social landscape shifted
Sure. Yeah.
after COVID. I can tell you, if there's somebody walking down the sidewalk, we keep distance. That's something that has just continued on in spite of political climate, dude. The uncertainty, the far polarization on both sides, all the noise, you don't know what to believe, and constant bombardment of, oh my God, the crisis is coming. Okay, so people hit chronic stress again. They don't have any locus of control because they're like, I don't know what's happening and I can't handle this, and too much unpredictability. And then on top of that, then we have our physical climate. We have our physical space. What
Yeah.
is that doing? Is it conducive? And I would venture out to say that the bulk majority, especially of Americans, don't think about that.
Mm-mm.
I'm not saying everybody does int. Some people definitely do. But typically it's people that have enough money to go pay somebody to come in and design their house in a certain way. This is the allure of interior designers. That's what they do. They
You
set
know.
up spaces according to your preferences. There's so much that go into this, and these things are not metaphors. These are the conditions, the circumstances that are defining that I shouldn't say defining, but that are requiring your nervous system to adapt each and every single day. Oh, great. Another person got shot on a college campus for talking about something that they shouldn't be, but for saying something that made people feel uncomfortable. That's a problem, especially when those images got passed around social media like you wouldn't fucking believe, man. I had kids coming up being like, Mr. Rudd, did you see this video? Nope, didn't want to watch it. They're like, it's disgusting. I'm like, yeah, no shit. You just watched somebody get shot. What'd you expect? Yeah, like it wasn't going to end well for you.
Yeah.
And so Is it any wonder then why? And so, but this brings us to our model, and it's super easy to remember. It's SERT, SERT. You have four primary domains that are
I mean, like, for
influencing.
example, Larry, the thing that just happened, it kind of threw us off a little bit. Like, that's
Right,
prime
exactly.
example.
When things don't work as expected,
Yeah.
that influences our emotional tone. And so that's what we have. We have sensory, we have emotional, we have relational, and we have temporal. And so sensory should be relatively obvious: light, color, temperature, sound, movement, those sensory impacts. And we're getting an understanding of how those things work, right? We know how light affects, or lack of light. We know that color goes ahead and produces emotion. We know that temperature can influence our internal states, because that's where cold plunges have came about and is like, whoa. We know that if there's too much movement in any sort of space, in any sort of way, some of us get nauseous. That's definitely a possibility. And we understand that really loud and inappropriate sounds can cause chaos and nervousness.
No,
And
yeah,
then we
because
have,
like
from
taking like for
sensory, then
example
we
like
move
that.
to emotional.
Sorry, I was gonna say taking the example
The
of
what?
life, for example. Can you hear me? Am I on a weird delay? I don't know what's going on.
You're okay.
Okay. I was just gonna say, like taking light out as an example, how light or environmental light affects us. So it's going on internally. We don't have any control with it. For example, looking at daylight savings, it's getting darker earlier now, and most people typically I'll be up at 9, 8, 10 o'clock, and that's when I'll get tired before I need to go to sleep. But at 6 o'clock now, I need to go to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
And why is that? And just
Right.
biologically speaking, when there's a decrease in light, your eyes send a signal to the your pineal gland, and then your pineal gland, that's where melatonin is secreted and made. So those pinealocytes, they sense that there is a decrease in light, therefore it reduces tryptophan. That's the amino acid that is
Mm-hmm.
turned into melanin, and so then you have now melatonin all throughout your body, and then you're like,
Right.
oh, I really need to go to sleep. Same
Yeah.
thing with going to the tryptophan. That's why after Thanksgiving, turkey has a lot of tryptophan. You eat the turkey, you're like, oh, I need to go to bed because you just had an increased amount of tryptophan in your body, and your body's like, I need to do something with this. So it's going to turn it into like melatonin and make you very sleepy and tired.
Right. I will tell you, when I switched the room, I switched everything to warm lighting, and it is made, just like, to quote the youth, it has made the vibe in there infinitely better, because it's not harsh. One of the first things that I
Exactly.
noticed when I went to Portugal last year was that all of their lights, street lights and things like that, were all really warm tones. And it gave this super cool, relaxed, and calming vibe to the whole city. That I thought was really neat. So
Like
then from
exactly.
there,
And I think we've all been there, like where you've like I don't know, gone to a hotel or sleeping at a friend's house, and like maybe they live in the city and there's just a lot of light, and you're like, I just could not get a good night of sleep because there was just too much light from the outside coming in that your body just could not adjust to it because it was not producing all the mechanical processes that it needs to make you fall asleep.
yes, yeah, you definitely have a uh, a set way that your body, I don't want to say set. You have an optimal way in which your body is going to send and receive signals. And if those become thrown off due to the environment around you, that's when we start to see those problems. And this is what makes it so, I don't want to get there yet. I want to get through the model. I want to come back to that though. Okay? So remind me to come back if you don't mind, because I might
I,
forget, but I'm hoping
I
not to,
got you.
because I think that that's really important. After sensory, that tends to influence emotional,
Hmm.
because sensory affects the messages that are being sent and how they're being sent. The emotional piece then comes over, and it but you start paying attention to space's mood, its tone, the atmosphere that goes on, the vibes, if you will. Maybe we will change the name of that, but it's okay. It makes no difference. I don't know if it matters if it's marketable or not. We're really just talking. There's the marketing way to say it, and then there's the more academic way. I feel this is a little bit more academic, but that's
Yeah.
fine. A space has an emotional tone to it, and that will affect you. We pick up on other people's emotions,
Yeah.
and their emotions lift us up, bring us down, whatever. But when it comes to spaces, they have an emotional tone as well. And I don't think we typically tend to, it's not something that we tend to think about a lot. It's not like I'm like, ooh.
Yeah.
The only time that I'm really going to pay attention and really notice is if it's such a drastic change from what I just experienced. So if I'm walking from outside, right now I think it's 25 degrees outside and really frigid, everything's icy. So if I walk from there inside of a house that's got fire going all warm light, I'm going to notice because it's such a drastic shift. But I'm not always going to pay attention to that. And because sometimes it's very, very subtle. And this goes back to those compounding experiences because little by little, this is what builds up your mental and emotional state over time. It is relational. It involves social dynamics. It involves your perception of belonging or whether or not you are in threat mode because that is on you. That is where your mind then begins to emerge out of this and say, okay, I am not in a, uh, I'm not at
Right.
threat level 5, I'm at threat level 0, or I'm at threat level 2. And then I can interact with a little bit more of those things. But I'm going to tell you, if I'm at threat level 5 and I'm walking around, the only thing that is going to combat that is threat level 0. But in the emotional space, where do we have that inside of America? I don't know. There's no space like that for me. Even art galleries aren't threat level 0 for me. And I love going to art galleries. That's one of my favorite pastimes, dude. But that's not a threat level 0. So if we're
Yeah.
constantly walking around threatened, these things become even more difficult then to see because that emergent mind is threatened by everything and trying to comprehend and understand social dynamics. And then it is also temporal. So it is relative to time. The pacing of it all, how fast is your life moving? We noticed that people who tend to live in slower paced lives, they tend to live a little bit longer. Interesting. But that affects what? What does that affect? It affects your heart rate. If you're living in a slower environment, your heart's not pumping as fast. If you're in a constant high stress, high speed environment, your body's it takes more beats. Then it stands to reason why. I was watching a video a long time ago and a physicist was like, you only have so many heartbeats. We know that. It's not a maybe. We can pretty much accurately determine when you're going to kick the bucket based off of your heart rate a lot of the time. Interesting. Fascinating.
Mhm.
But then that intensity, that speed, and then all of these things, the sensory, the emotional, how it relates to you, the timing, all of this stuff interacts to that your mind tries to make sense of and then build up this property out of it. And it all happens like this. It happens before we even notice it. We are unconscious of so much of this until it actually happens. And for most of us, the only way to determine that it's happened is either somebody's taught us about some of these concepts that allow us to think about them,
Yeah.
or we've seen it. We have something to compare it to. We have to have something to compare it to because if we've never seen it before, we can't conceive of it. If you have never seen the sky outside, you've never taken a step outside and I told you the sky is pink, you are going to believe the sky is pink. Why? Because you have absolutely no evidence to counter that.
Yeah.
Everything sensory, everything emotional, social, speed, all of these things interact to determine where your mind is at. We've seen this over and over again. We just haven't spoken about it. We haven't
About it. Yeah.
labeled it. We haven't come out. I mean, I'm not talking about some new process. These are all processes that have been going on. CBT attempts to address all of these things. Psychotherapy attempts to address all of these things. If I know that the red cup is triggering, well, when I see the red cup, let's change our thought process, right? But the problem is that with CBT and those thought processes, when we're talking about core frameworks that are unconscious, that are built into our cellular level, it's not a matter of reframing. It's not a matter of
Yeah.
thinking that red cup doesn't bother me anymore. And maybe that I'm not, that's a bit of a joke example.
True.
I if you really want to get technical, we could go in, and we can, talk about. So some of the things that I use CBT for, right? For a really long time, I thought that no matter what, I had absolutely nothing to offer anybody. Anybody. It didn't matter. It doesn't matter that I had all this evidence to the contrary. That was a predominant thought that I would have. And when something happened, I was like, well, it's just because I'm useless, so it doesn't really matter. But changing that thought process, because it's not built into my very foundational core, has a lot of utility.
Yeah.
However, if we address the underlying environmental issues, we will begin to start thinking differently anyway, because it's going to alter us on a more meta aspect that will then ripple out to everything else. It's like, okay, I mean, if we think about it, I guess you can think about it like the layers of the onion. One layer is psychotherapy. That's your first layer. It kind of came off and is super cool. Then your next layer is CBT. Hey, we went one step deeper. We're going to actually focus and pay attention to where your thoughts are. And we're going to peel back that layer and then lay that back on again. And now, without getting too much into where I want to head, maybe next season, really your next layer is the body, and paying attention to that. Your body and your mind is an adaptive, open system. Your body doesn't operate in a fixed system. It does not
Mm.
operate in a fixed way. It is adaptive over time. If I change my diet, my body changes. If let's go with some extremes. If I only eat cake, my body's going to shift. It's a guarantee. There's no
Yeah.
way around
And
that.
if
Right. It's just what happens. If I start eating healthy, my body changes its processes. This is dynamic and adaptive, and it is constantly changing. Your body is constantly going through cleanup processes to remove dead cells. It is constantly going. So your mind is in a constant state of flux. It's not static. It can't be static, because all of these processes are going on. Have you ever had I don't want to say a particularly rough workout, but a day where you just pushed your body that much further than you're normally used to? What happens the next day?
you are sore.
You are sore. Is your mind operating at full capacity?
Not really.
No, because it is emergent from the internal processes that are going on, just like the external processes. That is a big idea. Are things like identity, they are not fixed. This is
Exactly.
one of the minor. This is why when people ask me my opinion on any sort of reassignment surgery, I tell them not until they're old enough to make their own decisions, because they can do what they want, but ideally not until their brain is fully developed. Because your identity is going to go through a lot of changes from 18 to 25. However,
Mhm.
should anybody be getting any sort of thing like that before they're 18? No, because they don't understand that that has lifelong repercussions, and that your identity is going to shift. Shit, I got a different fucking haircut and switched it up entirely. Changes identity. I can start dressing a different way. I can start changing the fashion. My identity will shift over time. Now, is that the case for a lot of people? Maybe not, and probably not. A lot of people have the same hairstyle and do whatever. Sometimes they might feel safe enough, and it is a matter of feeling safe enough to
Yeah.
experiment and to try and do something different. But not everybody's going to do that. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But what to I need to kind of I feel like I have to convey there is no separation between you and your environment. You are directly tied to the environments with which you are in. You are a
Yeah.
product of your environment.
No.
We've been saying that for a while, but we haven't fully made that jump and made those connections and pieced them
Wishes.
all together. Do you know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
The system with which you exist inside of and yourself bring each other about. This is what we kind of understand about focus. Again, I don't pay attention to everything that's in my room. I know for a fact that I have a massive Harry Potter book sticking up out of my bookshelf up here. I had no idea that book was up here until just this moment in time, simply because I don't pay attention to that book. I've read it 3 times, or maybe twice. I don't know. I've read it a few times. Let's call it what it is, because I read it to my kid. It's not a maybe. This is how our mind. This is why there's no fixed location for our mind. This is how we can describe some of those more out of body experiences,
Right.
or those experiences that we struggle to explain in Eastern traditions. This makes sense. So if you think about when your environment shifts, the person is also going to shift. It has nothing to do with being weak. It has nothing to do with being strong. It has everything to do with this is how open systems work.
Work.
This
Yeah.
is why we use Apple instead of Android, because too many people have access to the altering of the Android ecosystem. It is more chaotic. It is more complex. Nothing wrong with it. That's just how it is. When you think about an Apple ecosystem, it is very tight. It is a closed system. Not everybody gets permission to go ahead and alter that ecosystem. Apple is very strict over who they let build for their ecosystem, and not it's not a matter of person to person. It's not like you're saying, oh well, I don't know who you are, you can't build. It's a matter of what you've built. You propose, you can build for it, you can submit it for proposal. Then after that, they're going to determine, all right, well, this is right for our ecosystem or it's not. You are not an Apple ecosystem. You are much closer to an Android ecosystem. I said closer, not the exact same. So you have to understand that all of it, internal, external, right? My focus is external because there's a lot of that we've already done with the internal psychotherapy, CBT, all those things. They address the internal. I'm not saying that we're not concerned with that, but I'm concerned with the outside, because the outside affects the inside. The inside and the inside and the external are constantly at play, and then we emerge because of it. Does this make sense?
No, it's
I
making
hope
sense.
I'm okay. Good. I'm just making sure. And so then do you have anything before I move on?
No, I don't.
Okay. That's fine. I just want to make sure. So why does this matter in our current age in time right now? There's a couple of reasons. There's 2 big technologies that are on the rise. Well, there's a few. Let me rephrase that. There's quite a few that are in play right now that are going to drastically alter some of those environmental perceptions. AI is huge. AI is all over the place. We are talking about building massive data centers at scale. Not saying that's right, wrong, or indifferent, but AI it's changing DC all over the place. Like, they're building mass amounts of stuff over the bridge in Virginia. It is altering the landscape in this area. XR is coming. Those kinds of technologies with projectors. I don't know if you're familiar with projection mapping, but projection mapping is pretty cool. It's like you can set up different visuals in your space using a projector and a computer it's super neat, but again, giving you the ability to directly alter those environments. So XR is going to be very important when it comes to all of this. And quantum. Quantum's another big one because it's going to change how fast we can get and receive information. Okay. And to give you an idea, from my understanding, they've made quite a few breakthroughs recently in terms of quantum technologies that bring it
Hmm.
much, much closer to a reality. So as those things start to get ingrained, again, the system is going to start to shift. We are going to start to shift. And when it comes to things like AI, it can affect your emotional. It will definitely affect your temporal because you're getting super fast pacing. You're getting more emotionally unpredictable because you really don't understand. And the more conversation that you have, you're getting a higher stimulus. Your stimulus that you are intaking becomes a lot more dense. So you're getting more and more information. How we relate to things in space then is going to shift. All of these things are going to change. So our current nervous system is being shaped and molded by how we interact with those AIs. And so this has been a major ordeal for that is in the news, but that we don't fully we don't have that language, we don't have that tone for it yet.
Yeah.
It's not about, oh god damn it, I lost my train of thought so fucking hard.
You were talking about XR. Let's see how it's
Oh,
not
AI.
common. AI.
Right. So if depending on how I use it, that's shaping my mind. I'm either using it in a very limited capacity, which people do. They use it for basic conversation and to help them with their research paper or things like that. Or I'm using it in a more limitless capacity. I'm using it to learn things. I'm using it to teach me the information that I need in order to go better. I will tell you, AI has made me such a better cook. It's insane because I can talk to it about my ideas and I can come up with recipes that would take me a whole lot longer to go and work with. When XR begins to take more of a front seat, and it's just a matter of when. It's not. I don't really think it's a matter of if. It's just a matter of when.
When?
Um, w- w- Spatial influence will literally guide how we design those technologies for better mental health. And it'll get integrated with AI. So all of that is going to have to work together. And we're going to work on design considerations while we're writing up all of this stuff and publishing a lot of it and looking forward to doing a lot of that. This is not what we're talking about is not AI safety. It's not XR safety. It's not tech safety. It is cognitive
Yeah.
safety. It is protecting the cognitive processes for us. And maybe I don't like the word safety, but it is, and I don't like the term optimization. I'll have to think about that one because, again, I think safety is going to imply and throw people through the ringer, and we're going to have the left side be like, "Oh, I got to be safe." No, that's not what I mean. And then we're going to have the right side fighting with them and be like, "I don't give a fuck about your safety." I don't want that. That's not what I'm. So I'm going to have to think about a term for that one. We're going to have to come up with something different there, but that's okay. But thinking about it this way, the tools that we use, the technology that we use, AI, XR, when quantum comes quantum, it's not just a tool. It is a force that influences our spatial understanding of the world around us. It shapes our mental environment. It determines what it is that we live inside. And the beautiful thing about being human beings, right, is we have an incredible level of control when it comes to how we behave and how we react inside of those things. I know that's moderately clashing with some of the Gene comments from earlier, but that's outside of the scope of this for today. I'm happy to have a conversation with anybody about that, but for today, that's well beyond the scope of things. And so we've spit out a whole ton of shit. And so what I'm going to ask is, number one, Carlos, do you have questions before we kind of get to the more practical aspect of things, or anything to add, contribute, whichever?
Do I have any questions? No, I think you've hit pretty much everything goes, I'm thinking a question, but then you'll kind of answer it as the conversation kind of goes along. So nothing that's popping off, but if any questions comes up, like I can share in the comments and then we can talk about it. But I'm trying to think personally at this specific time now, but when I listen to it, I might have more questions that come along, and then we can obviously discuss it when the
Which
time is right.
is wonderful. Do you know what all this was in response to? This was all in response to your comment last week about, I don't agree. I agree, but I don't
I
agree. And I
see.
was like, well, how? Because I told you I would reflect on it.
Yeah.
And this is what came about that minor disagreement. And it was minor. It wasn't a major disagreement.
No.
But that's huge. That highlights a couple of things. Number one, that you never know where inspiration is going to come from. You have no idea. I trying to control that level and that aspect of inspiration is just not in anybody's best interest.
Yeah.
And then what it also brings up is that just because two people fucking disagree does not mean that they can't come together and find a goddamn solution.
No, and that is true. And also, like, we like our disagree. Like again, I think we were disagree. Like it was a minor disagreement. Like I wouldn't even
Right.
call it a disagreement. I'll say like it was just like
Right.
a difference of viewing specific definition of specific actions and words. I think that's ultimately what it came down to during that last week's conversation.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. But I've seen it happen. People have falling outs over far less.
Ugh. See, people are not as cool and mature and emotionally evolved and intelligent as us. We're just
But
better.
here's what I'm going to say. Maybe that's by design and not by their own choice. Spatial influence is real. So,
I mean, it's true. I'll give it like 50% them, 50% everything else.
well, so I will tell you, but this is why we spout off agency as much as we
Yeah.
do, because that is a core tenet of these things operating. You
Yes.
have to be aware of these things. You have to have agency in order for them to take hold in your life. And I think that that is a perfect place to move into that more practical side of things and what this
Absolutely.
could look like. And so what I want people to think about is think about an environment that they spend a lot of time in. It can be a bedroom, it can be an office, it can be anything. I'm going to use the example of my desk, right? So I'm going to take my
Hmm.
desk. For a long time, I had books piled up on top of it. I couldn't even put my computer down because um, whatever. It was pretty crazy, right? So this past week, I took my desk, I moved it from the far corner of the room over to the other side of the room, which is why you have this beautiful new stunning background with saline solution and a University of Maryland turtle and some sound stuff, which is whatever. Just that shift alone has made the placement of the desk for me super appealing.
I mean,
Okay.
exactly. Like I think it goes back to what's it called the idea of feng shui. You want to make
Hmm.
the space flow, so you want to be in there. People create a space that you want to be in, or a space
Uh-huh.
that flows, a space that has good energy. If you have bulky stuff ever and there's no flow to the room, you don't want to spend time in there, or you have too much light coming around, enough light, you are not, it's not going to be conducive to you and to
Mhm.
your processes.
And we've always understood that that's been a concept that's around for a long time, but never has that been, that I'm aware of, has it been applied to mental health conditions and thinking about it in terms of those, because you are exactly right. And when it comes to practicality, how do I do this? You're talking about moving a desk from one space to another. You're talking about reducing clutter by removing books. I changed lighting. I told you about removing light bulbs and changing the lighting.
Yeah.
Any of it, any little thing that you can do today is going to have a little bit of an impact. And that's okay. You don't have to make a major overhaul. I made a major overhaul because I'm crazy and that's what I needed to do at that moment in time. I knew that again, these are my principles. These are the principles that I'm living by currently. This is what I'm doing. So if I'm fully on board with it, I might as well go fucking all in. I'm not expecting everybody else to go all in. I'm asking you to do one small change at a time just to see what it does and to notice the profound effects, dude. I mean, I put an emotional anchor. You could do something like that. My kid got me a gift, and so it's just something that reminds me that, hey, I'm valuable to somebody. I have and I don't say that in a depressing way. It literally is just, I talked about before feeling useless, and that was a big thing. So having that reminder there is super huge. I have some action figures that remind me of good experiences with my kids. So I have a few emotional anchors on here, and then I have the things that I need. I've got the books that I reference regularly, whatever else is necessary, but that's it. Nothing else. And then you can always, one of the things that I like doing is setting timers. I'm big on timers. I know that sounds crazy, but there's a thing with, they just make life so much fucking easier. I'm like, all right, I got this for 10 minutes and then I'm going to shift to this. I got this for 15 minutes and then I'm going to shift to this. And provided I break it down really short like that, that works. But so when we're talking about creating a temporal rule or creating a time rule, in that space, just go and for the first 2 minutes, like I said, you can start small, you can go to 5, whatever. Don't don't have any notifications, don't have any distractions. And just look and observe the space, completely present, completely mindful there, and looking at it and seeing, hmm, that really bothers me. I don't like that
Yeah.
there. Let me go ahead and move it. And who knows what it's bothering you because of. I know when I see a lot of wires, I start going crazy. I'm like, I don't like wires. I
I
is
I get it.
whatever. That's I would venture out to say that it's relative, but I'm not gonna just blanket out everybody and be like, yeah, everybody hates wires, fuck, bro. um, But if you can sit there and make that shift and you can go and just, you don't even, in all honesty, you don't have to focus on the space itself. This is just a way to practice finding out what you like and what you don't. But what I would do is
Hmm.
every time you're in that space, make it a distractions free space for at least a couple of minutes. Make it someplace where you can calmly pay attention to what is going on, because then you're going to notice the shift that's happening because you just removed something or because you added something. It's not all about removal. Some of it is about adding. It's just a matter of, again, that personalization and what you need in that moment. Okay. And I would venture out to say that if you can do that, if you can do that and continue to do it over time, you can make one change a week. You can make one change a day. You can make one change every 2 weeks. It doesn't matter, because one change that is in a positive direction is going to help you get further and further. That is a massive ideal. At any moment in time, you can stop. You can turn off notifications or just put your phone somewhere. Who cares? I don't turn off notifications. I just put my phone somewhere else to where I don't even think about it. Notice what's going on in your environment. sit there, pay attention to what's going on inside of your body. Pay attention. Is there tightness in my chest? How am I breathing? Is it short and shallow, or is it deep and slow? And pay attention to what is going on around you, and notice what it is that's affecting your physical and mental well-being. This can be
Mm,
done at any point in time, and it really doesn't take very long. You can take 30 seconds and pay attention to what's going on around you, and you might identify one piece. It may take longer
yeah,
than that, but depending on how overwhelming it is, I'm sitting here in my space now as I'm talking about this, going through, and I'm looking at this stack of books on one of my dressers. I'm like, God damn it, I gotta clean that shit up. It's horrible and driving me crazy. But that's a me thing. That's just, some people are perfectly comfortable in clutter, and that's all right. I don't, who am I to judge on that one?
that is true.
I've seen people with very eclectic houses that it works. It's not necessarily hoarding, but there's a ton of shit going on, and you're like, "Arr! It's assaulting me." No, it's not. But when you I think the key thing that to keep in mind, especially with all of this, is to remember that spatial influence is not about what's wrong with you. It's about what's shaping you. And things are
Exactly.
constantly shaping you. They are constantly in flux. It is happening at all points in time, whether we are aware of it or not, whether we want to or not. None of it is fixed. Okay? And so this brings us to the entire closing of the second season, which I think is
Whew.
fascinating. Fascinating. We have been through, we've been talking about agency really for 2
Yeah,
seasons. We've talked about our senses of belonging and
yeah,
where we
yeah,
belong, and that's okay. We've definitely addressed some topics of digital life and how that's
yeah,
overwhelming and how that influences our behaviors. We've talked about where we place our attention and where we place our focus. The
yeah,
the harms and the potential benefits of AI, all of it relates to mental health and finding that connection. And ultimately, I think it is truthfully about finding a place where we feel at home inside of our own mind. And I know that sounds crazy, but I would venture out to say that if I'm in an ideal mental state, I am at home within my mind. And again, that does not mean that I have to be alone. That means again, I'll use the sports reference. I can be playing a sports game with people and still feel like I am at home and like I am at peace. I'm at home in my
yeah.
mind, but I'm not by myself reflecting.
So
That's
exactly.
not the way it has to be. Make sense?
No, 113,000%. Yes.
Awesome. And so everything that we've really discussed this season points to a major, I,
Look,
I say
the
major. Go for it.
I'll agree that it's major, like major about your health and like your overall well-being.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, I was gonna say truth, and I was like, I don't know if it's a
Oh,
major truth. I
I
don't know if I
see.
want to say truth. That
Yeah,
was that was what I didn't want to. Um.
gotcha.
I. We could say major idea, principle. I like that. A major principle that your well-being is shaped by the spaces, physical, digital, emotional, with which you reside in and which you inhabit. You
Yes,
can't control all of it. It's impossible. We talked about that a little bit last week, but you can shift one thing here and there, and you can make those tiny micro shifts. And sometimes those little shifts are able to shift your entire system. And I shouldn't
yes.
say sometimes, eventually it will. Because
Hopefully,
again, yeah, well, no, it will. If you're actively, believe me, and I guess when we reflect back on the past 2 seasons, we were in a very, very different spot at the beginning of the first season. It was the
yeah,
summertime. Life was crazy because I was,
yes.
everything was a whole lot more chaotic. At this moment in time, less than 6 months later, things are peaceful. We are on a trajectory that is going upward rather than going upward rather quickly rather than snail pacing it. And so those small shifts are going to be what ultimately ends up affecting the system the most. And so we all want to understand that we live inside adaptive influence systems. And what I mean is that we are constantly being influenced all over the place, and that those influences are changing constantly. Whether we are aware of them or not, they shape our attention, they shape our emotions, decisions, relationships, identity, choices. I did say decisions, whatever, it doesn't matter.
I mean, but
All of those
this, well,
things.
I feel like decision and choices are slightly different because you have multiple choices and then you decide on a choice.
I guess, okay, yeah, I'll dig that. And then once you can see these systems, you get a huge piece of agency back. You get a huge piece of choice back. And it is much easier to kind of define and look like. And so really what we are asking or what we are promoting is to choose joy by choosing your spaces. How do we do that? By becoming aware enough to do so in the first place.
Oh, we also want to thank you guys for an amazing second season. We will be back in the new year, and it'll like hopefully with more content and with more of you out there to come join the Joyce team and support us, and us supporting you guys as well.
Thanks for listening, everybody. Carlos and I greatly appreciate it. Comment something that resonated with you today. We are here for support, feedback, or anything else that you want to share. Join us on the Kindred app, a perfect space to keep unpacking what came up during the episode. Get live, peer-to-peer support from people with shared experiences. Kindred is built for those moments that no one else sees.
Take this one step deeper by reviewing today's reflection prompt in the show notes. Please don't forget to subscribe, like this video, and tune in next week for a new episode. Until next time, choose joy.